Hello, I'm Ray Hostetler. Welcome to Ray's Authoritative DVD series. In this edition, we'll be looking at electric helicopters and eCCPM, and I'm really excited about this series. The growth of electric helicopters has been exploding, and guys have been asking me, Ray, when are you going to do a series on electric helicopters? Well, this is it. Several months ago, I went out and bought two T-Rex 450Ss, and shortly thereafter, a third one. Now, I haven't owned electric helicopters myself that long, but I have quite a bit of indirect electric experience. For instance, several years ago, my dad had a little Piccolo, fixed-pitch electric helicopter that flew on a NiCad battery pack for all of about 3 minutes. That didn't turn me on because it wasn't collective pitch and it didn't fly that long. Also, Dad has 36-inch span fixed-wing models as well as an 8-foot Stinson Voyager. That has an electric motor as big as my fist and 2 large battery packs to go with it. Also, I've watched and helped other people fly their T-Rexes. But those helicopters really didn't turn me on either, and I think the reason is they really weren't built right, they weren't balanced right, and they weren't set up right. So it wasn't until I bought my own T-Rexes, built them, and set them up, and flew them myself, and I have to tell you, I fell in love. I mean, the T-Rex is so cool. I can take it out in the evening just before sunset and hover a couple of flights right out in front of the house on the street. Or in the morning when it's calm, take it out and hover it. It's absolutely fabulous. Now, I like to go to the flying field to socialize, but nothing beats the currency of me flying the little T-Rex out in front of the house. And the helicopter is so smooth. It's not particularly smart or safe, but I like to hover it about 2 feet in front of my face and just marvel at the smoothness. Not only is it smooth, but the motor starts all the time, the mixture is always perfect, and the motor doesn't care if it underspeeds or overspeeds by 2,000 or 3,000 RPM. The T-Rex 450S is a fabulous, fabulous helicopter. Is it perfect out of the box? No. Can we make it perfect? Yes, we can. In this DVD, we're going to cover it all. First of all, I'm going to take a few minutes and we're going to look at the Blade CX2. After that, we're going to look at the Blade CP Pro. But this DVD is really about the T-Rex 450S and the DX6 and the DX7 Spektrum radios. I'm going to explain LiPo batteries and chargers to you, and after that I'm going to give you some building tips for the T-Rex 450 series of helicopters. Now, I'm not going to get into too much depth there because I've already got volumes 4 and 5 which explain the theory of helicopter flight and how to build a helicopter with tender, loving care. So after I give you the building tips, we're going to take quite a bit of time and I'm going to explain the theory of the DX6 and the DX7 radios to you. After that's done, we'll set up the T-Rex 450 on the bench, and then I'll take it out to the flying field and show you how well it flies using my setup procedures. Look at that. The Blade CX2 is a fabulous little helicopter. You know, I was anticipating giving you a bunch of tips on this helicopter, and there aren't any. You buy it, you plug in the battery pack, and you fly it. It's incredible. For instance, I made some holes in the canopy so that I could adjust the 4-in-1 unit. Didn't have to. About the only thing that I did was I cut a little slot in the back for the battery so that the battery slides in place, the connectors come out from the rear, and they go into the 4-in-1 unit. The Blade CX2 is fabulous for orientation training inside the house. If the weather's bad outside, it doesn't make any difference. Just push the furniture off to the side and fly this thing in the living room. I highly recommend the Blade CX2 because it's so much fun and it's so simple. As an added bonus, the CX2 comes with a 2.4 gigahertz radio. Of course, 2.4 gigahertz means that you can fly anywhere, anytime. You won't interfere with anyone else, and no one else will interfere with you. Now, the transmitter is powered by 4 AA batteries. And the neat thing about the transmitter is it comes with a digital display, so that when the batteries run down, it beeps to let you know that the batteries need replaced. So, while the CX2 is a toy in the overall realm of model helicopters, it's a great toy. There are only a few extra parts that you'll need for the CX2. I'd recommend several sets of lower and upper main rotor blades. The rotor blades are different because it's a counter-rotating helicopter. Then I'd recommend at least 1 extra battery pack so you can fly 1 pack while the other is charging. Finally, sooner or later you're going to break the plastic spindles. They make upgrade spindles for the upper spindle as well as the lower spindle, and this is the upper spindle. And they're relatively expensive at $17 to $22, but they're very nice. The CX2 also comes with its own battery charger. It has a switching adapter that's a wall wart, plugs into the outlet, and it converts AC to DC. So you just take that and plug it into the side of the charger, and away you go. The other option is to use the alligator clips right out of the charger and hook up these alligator clips to a 12-volt battery. The charger has 2 outlets, one for a 2-cell pack and one for a 3-cell pack. I wish I was as excited about the Blade CP Pro as I am about the Blade CX2, but I'm not, and let me explain my reasons why I'm not. First of all, you really can't compare the CP Pro with the T-Rex 450. They're really 2 different classes of helicopter. The CP Pro is more of a micro helicopter, and its whole purpose is something small that you can take out of the box and instantly fly inverted. And it will do that. It does that as advertised. But there are some limitations in the way that it does that. First of all, there's really only one knob where you can adjust the throttle settings a little bit, and other than that, you have to fly it the way that it comes out of the box because there are no other adjustments. The biggest thing with the CP Pro is that it does not come with a 2.4 gigahertz transmitter, so you have to exercise frequency control when you fly this helicopter. Also, the cyclic response is very hot or very sensitive out of the box. The manual talks about adding wheel collars to the flybar to tame down the cyclic response, and I would certainly do that. Now, as small as the helicopter is, it's really not meant to be flown in your living room. With the fast cyclic response, certainly don't lift it off in your living room for the first time. This helicopter is really made for a large indoor area such as a gymnasium or an auditorium. So there's my take on the Blade CP Pro. I would really suggest that you save up your pennies, buy a DX6 or a DX7 and a T-Rex 450, and I think you'll be a lot happier in the long run. Here's why I'm using the T-Rex 450S in this DVD. First of all, I wanted a T-Rex that had eCCPM because I'm going to teach you how to set up eCCPM. Then I wanted a helicopter that had either plastic or carbon fiber side frames. The beauty of plastic or carbon fiber is it's either perfectly straight or it's broken. If you have a ship with aluminum side frames, they can bend in a crash, and then you can never tell if they're perfectly straight. So I opted to go on the upper end rather than plastic. I took the carbon fiber. Next, the 450S has aluminum where you need it and plastic everywhere else. For instance, the hub block is aluminum, but the main rotor grips and the tail rotor grips are plastic. The aluminum hub gives the precision to the rotor head, and the plastic blade grips give the survivability if you crash. So in my opinion, the T-Rex 450S is the perfect blend of sophistication versus simplicity. One of the beautiful things about electric helicopters is you don't need a lot of support equipment to fly them. In other words, you don't have to drag around fuel, a starter, all that kind of stuff. Everything can be contained in one box. So this is really neat. This is a Lines stock box, and let me show you how I have mine packed up. First of all, you'll notice that I've turned the foam padding so that the skids of the helicopter point downward. I've got some tools and batteries. Let's take a little closer look at exactly how I have my box packed. First of all, in the bottom of the box, I have a Sears Craftsman roll-up bag, and it holds my bigger tools. So, I've got a regular pliers, a ball link pliers, 2 larger screwdrivers, and an assortment of files. With the tool bag removed, we can pull the T-Rex 450S out of the box. One of the nice things about electric helicopters is they don't require very many tools. Here are some of the tools that I've assembled for my T-Rex. Down at the bottom, I've used an X-Acto knife to cut a groove in the foam for my Astroflight Blinky, again, priceless when flying electrics. Here I have some spare Allen wrenches, the most important of which is a 1.5 millimeter Allen wrench with a ball end. Then I've got regular Allen wrenches, 2 small screwdrivers, a very small blade screwdriver, a 1.5 millimeter hex wrench, a small hemostats, my 2 X-Acto knives, and I made the holes for the X-Acto knives by taking a piece of brass tubing, sharpening the end, chuck up the brass tubing in a drill, and just drill down into the foam. Then you can slip the X-Acto knives in place. These are the stock T-Rex 450 screwdrivers. What I really want to show you is how I've tucked Astro's power supply into the bottom of the box. First of all, I have a little piece of foam, and this piece of foam supports the main gear when the helicopter is laid in the box. Then I've made some cutouts on the bottom here and in the top, and the cord lays in these little cutouts. Then, if I remove the cord, you can see how I've tucked the corners in underneath the canopy cutout. So this way it really holds the end in place. Then to remove the power supply, you just grab it from this end, lift up, pull out, and it just slides out. I made the cutouts in the foam with a utility knife blade that's just snapped into a vice grip, and then you can just kind of saw down. It really works slick. Here's a little piece of felt that I use to protect the face of the DX7 transmitter from my Craftsman tool bag. Then I've got my neck strap here, and then the stick is rubber banded to the aft, right, and 45-degree position. This keeps the stick from hitting the boom support strut in the T-Rex. Then I've got a stock plastic box that has miscellaneous screws. Then I've got 2 small boxes here that fit into the stock cutouts. These are sized for Futaba servo boxes, so that's what you want for these 2 cutouts. Here I've got a JR servo box, and I made a little cutout for it to fit right down in there, and it houses all of my charge cords and adapters. Then I've got a pitch gauge, and you'll find out that you really don't need a pitch gauge too much if you set your helicopter up the right way. Mainly I use this for other people's helicopters if I'm helping them out. And then tucked down here in the bottom, I've got the Triton Junior charger. The neat thing about this charger, aside from being as small as it is that it can charge NiCads, nickel metal hydride, as well as LiPos. So I use this charger to charge my transmitter batteries as well as my flight LiPos. Here are my flight LiPos. I have provisions for 8 of these. I think I have 7 right now. But I charge these up and I can fly all day at the field without recharging LiPos. When I first started flying RC helicopters, I had one main question, and that is, what regulates the rotor RPM? Is it like a watch where the battery slowly winds down, but the hands keep going the same speed until the watch battery is dead? Or, as the battery winds down, do the watch hands slowly wind down? Well, it's the latter. In an RC helicopter, as the battery winds down, the rotor RPM also winds down, and we'll look at that in just a minute. But for now, I want to talk about 2 features that the ESC has, 2 things that it does. First of all, the ESC takes the input voltage from the LiPo battery pack, roughly 12.29 volts in a nice freshly charged pack, and it regulates it in 2 ways. It regulates it to the receiver and the servos, and it regulates it to the motor. First, for the receiver and servos, it takes the 12.29 volts and it outputs that at 6 volts. This lead plugs into the throttle channel of the receiver and supplies power for the receiver and servos. This is commonly called a BEC, or a battery eliminator circuit, because we don't have to have a separate battery pack to power the receiver and servos. We can basically suck off of the main pack. Now, we don't have to worry about losing the receiver and servos when this discharges, because this will be discharged at 9.6 volts, which is still plenty of power to supply 6 volts to the servos and the receiver. For the second part of the ESC, it supplies voltage to the motor, so that when we increase the stick, the ESC senses the increase in stick and will send more voltage to the motor. That's regulated through the throttle curves of the transmitter. So that's basically what the ESC does for us. Let's take just a minute and look at the ESC, or the electronic speed control, setup options. First of all, we have the different options that we can choose from, and then we have this transmitter stick position. So if you'd set the transmitter stick to low, you would choose the things in this column or row. Half stick, mid stick, the things in this column, and high, the things in this column. The things indicated with a dot are the default settings, and you can go ahead and just plug the ESC in and fly it with the default settings. There's nothing wrong with that. When you do plug the ESC into the radio, it will beep and it will read you back the settings that it is set at. And so that's a good thing to do every once in a while before you fly. Just listen to the beeps to make sure that things are set right. And when you set this up, you kind of have to be half musicologist and half Morse code expert. The ESC gives you a series of beeps, and it's initially a little confusing, but after you do it a few times, it's not bad. Okay, first of all is the brake. And the brake just determines what the motor does when you come to low stick. For a helicopter, obviously we want the brake disabled. There's a soft brake and a hard brake, and this would be for braking the propeller on an airplane. The default position is disabled. For the motor timing, low, mid, and high, the default is mid, and I've been very happy with the performance of the motor with mid timing. If you wanted a little bit more power out of the motor at the expense of battery drain, you could play with the high setting. For battery protection, it comes defaulted to the mid position. We're going to set up the high position. The assumption here is that you're learning how to fly, you're hovering a lot of the time, not doing real hard aerobatics, and so until you get a feel for how the LiPo batteries discharge, you want to play it safe. Once you push the helicopter a little bit harder, you can set this to the mid setting so that when you do a hard aerobatic maneuver, the ESC won't drop down into battery protection mode too soon or before you want it to. Obviously, do not use low battery protection. For the airplane mode, this just determines how the motor starts up. So in the airplane mode, the motor starts quickly. And then in the helicopter, we have two soft start modes, one without a governor and one with a governor. I've always used the one without a governor because I really don't care for the governor operation. To use the governor, generally the throttle curve has to be 80% or above, and that's a little faster than I want to run the rotor RPM. So after you get into advanced aerobatics, you can play with the governor mode if you want to, but we're not going to in this DVD. Finally, for throttle response, we have slow response for airplanes, and then medium, and then quick. The default is the quick position, and you absolutely need the quick position here because when you're flying a helicopter and move the throttle and collective stick, the collective moves, and so you want the motor to stay right with the collective pitch to hold the rotor RPM. If this is set to medium or standard, the motor will really lag behind the collective pitch, and the helicopter will feel like a fixed pitch machine when you're flying it.